Wonderful. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I know we'll probably still have a bunch popping in with us here. I wanted to get it going. So I'm Paula Sakoulis with the Blue Ox Business Academy of the Brainerd Lakes Chamber. And we are all Lakes proud, as you can see here. And thank you so much for being here today. And thank you especially to our panel, our industry representatives from multiple different industries. Thanks for being here. So we're going to have about a half an hour of presentation from each of the panelists. And then, well, not each, they each get 4 minutes. So we'll have a half an hour of presentation and then about a half an hour of Q&A. So what I'd like you to do is use your chat feature for Q&A. And if you can't find it, it's either on the bottom part of your screen, little chat icon, or if you move the mouse to the top part of your screen, you'll see a more button up there on the right. You can put your mouse over that, click on chat, and a chat box will pop up. Okay, so I am going to turn this over to Matt Killian, the president of the Brainerd Lakes Chamber. Oh, actually, Matt, before I do that, I just want to welcome everybody who's here as a panelist. So this is the Business Relief webinar at the local level. We have John Gale with Clifton Larson Allen, Paul Means with Riverwood Bank, Tyler Glynn with Brainerd Lakes Area Economic Development Corporation, or BLADEC. We have Shar Kinzer with Crow Power, Christy Westbrock with CTC, Chris Close with Close Converse, Ginny Knutson with Borden, Steinbauer, Kruger, and Knutson Law, and Daryl Kulak with Baxter Insurance Group. So thanks to all of you for being here. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks, everybody. It's nice to see you, at least virtually. It's been a long time, and we've been really working hard at the Chamber to really do a lot of things on a number of different fronts. But the first thing that I wanted just to say is how deeply personal that this crisis has been for me and for the Chamber of Commerce. You're all of our friends. We're very concerned, excuse me, by your stories. We've heard a lot of different ways that people have been hurting out there, but we're also inspired by the way that all of you have seemed to turn on a dime and offer new products and services and do your best just to rally together and make it through this thing. So I want to just say thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for devoting a little time today. I know everybody's busy, especially our panelists that had to do some prep for today. But we always believe that the role of the Chamber ought to be to connect people within the community and within the business community. And also, we believe that the best solutions are local solutions. So there's been a lot of talk about all of the federal and state programs that are available right now, but there are a lot of different solutions and options, excuse me, for relief that are available by the people that we know and trust. So that's really what today's webinar is about, and I want to get into it as soon as possible. But when we did our prep call last Friday, there's 4 themes that really kind of were highlighted within that we didn't want to spend a lot of time on with each individual person. So I just want to highlight these, and just about every one of our presenters said this on Friday. So number 1 is our industries are stable and reliable, right? The banks are well financed, they're insured by FDIC, they're going to be around, same as our utilities, same as the insurance companies, and everybody wanted to make sure that was out, that there's no panic that's necessary right now. I know you know that, but that was important to all of our presenters. The second thing is, don't make independent decisions. We all have bankers, we have accountants, we all have all these different business relationships that we often pay for. Make sure you're reaching out to all of those individuals before you make any decisions. For example, you know, even with those federal and state programs, if you apply for one or you accept funds for one, it may make you ineligible for another. So just make sure that you're staying abreast of all that. Second thing is proactive communication. These people don't know you need help unless you ask for it, and we're going to run through a lot of different options for that today, but just remember to ask for help, share your situation, and see what might be possible. And I think you're going to get a lot of that today as far as what those options could be. And then the last one is contact the chamber. I'd also throw on contact BLADEC as well. We may not have the answers right at our fingertips, but we have big Rolodexes, and we can get you pointed in the right direction. The last thing that I want to say before we get going, and I do want to get going here soon, but I wanted to just mention the next webinar that just came together about an hour ago, and I want to talk about it at the front just in case some of you have to drop off before we're done. We are scheduling a webinar at Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and it's going to be all about business relief and the Federal CARES Act. So we're able to put a panel together that includes Congressman Pete Stauber, the U.S. Chamber, and then the Minnesota Small Business Administration. Not sure who the representative is going to be yet, but they're going to walk through the Federal CARES Act, the Payroll Protection Program, the SBA emergency disaster loans, the tax credit, a whole bunch of stuff that you're probably already thinking about, but you haven't been able to connect maybe with the decision makers at that level. So 2 o'clock on Wednesday, you'll see an email come out a little bit later today that you can sign up for that. We're making it available to all businesses in the Lakes area, not just chamber members. And then if you have questions, we ask you to submit those in advance so we can customize the presentation. So watch for that. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks again to our presenters, and we'll get at it. Thanks, Paula.
Great. We have John Gallup from Clifton Larson Allen. John, if you'll unmute yourself and take it on.
Hey, great. Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Matt. And thanks to everybody on the call for taking time for this presentation. When we first started talking about this, and, you know, Matt and his group says you're limited to 4 minutes. Well, I've got a lot I can cover, so I'm going to rapid fire here. And I do have the chat open if you have questions. When we get to that part, I'll try to address those. There's been some confusion, certainly within folks I work with, as much as we see it in the media, about the tax deadlines and the filing and payments. Right now, our tax returns, federal tax returns, and all of the states have delayed the due date to July 15th of the tax returns. Federal and also extended the payment for the 2019 taxes until July 15th. Federal has allowed us to extend the first quarter estimate for 2020 until July 15th. The second quarter is still due June 15th. But many states, like Minnesota, have not extended the due date of that first quarter estimate. So that'll be due April 15th. We're still, you know, the CPA profession, we've got our lobbyists working on that. We'll see if that gets extended or not. I've got a few workaround ideas for that I'm consulting with my colleagues on. So again, reach out to your accountant, make sure you're not missing any deadlines. We'd also have additional time to fund IRAs, SEP contributions, health savings accounts until July 15th as well. The government programs are in flux. Since this all happened, I've spent most of my time doing COVID-19 consulting with my business clients around the EIDL loans and the PPP loans. You know, there's something as simple as calculating your average monthly payroll is a hotly debated item right now. CLA, we've been on the phone with the SBA and with Treasury trying to get a good definition around that. And the point being is that different financial institutions in our community are taking different approaches on that calculation, which really can affect the amount of loan that's available. So again, reach out to your colleagues. hopefully we'll have an answer. We're supposed to get an FAQ out from Treasury specifically to that point today. And then, with anything that goes through Congress, we have a ton of business in individual tax changes. And I'll just briefly run through a couple of those. We've got this, let's see where I want to go here. Deferral of employer Social Security taxes. So if you're not taking advantage of the PPP loans, you can defer up to 50% of the 6.2% Social Security. Half of that is due, let's see, December 30th of 2020. The other half is due December of 2021. I would just caution that if you do take advantage of that, be ready for the cash flow requirements, because those paying those late it's the last thing you want to pay late are those payroll taxes. Similar credits are available for self-employed people to defer the self-employment tax. We've got some employee retention credits, again, if you're not taking advantage of PPP. Net operating losses have changed. We've got a 5-year carryback on that. That's huge because we can create losses with accelerated depreciation, bonus depreciation. We can carry those losses back 5 years. And if you remember, we had tax rates as high as 35% corporate, 39.6% individual. Creating those losses now and carrying them back can free up some working capital for your businesses. Yeah, business interest limitation. I'll jump into some of the individuals. I think we've all heard about the $1,200 recovery rebate and the $500 per child. Take a look at your AGI. We've got some clients that are not wanting to file 2019 because they would be over the limits to get those. It just means that if they get the money, they don't get the credit in future years. For people affected by COVID-19, if you've got a stay-at-home order, I think all of us in Minnesota with the stay-at-home, we're eligible. If we take our IRAs, our pension plans, there's no 10% penalty on that. We've got up to 3 years to pay that money back into the account. Required minimum distributions, you don't have to take those if you're 70 and a half, or now it's 72. Those are waived for 2020. Charitable contributions, in most cases, you can deduct 100% of your adjusted gross income. And this just goes on and on and on. And a point being is reach out to your tax advisor. We've got a very, very strong community of tax advisors in this area. So reach out and stay in communication.
Great, thanks, John. Paul, you are up. Can you unmute yourself? And then Tyler as well.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Can you hear me?
I can. Yep, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started and then turn it over to Tyler to wrap things up. But so first of all, we talk about the banking industry. We have a lot of local credit unions. So when we talk about banking, we include our friends at the credit unions also. But Matt had mentioned at the very beginning about the fact that banks are well capitalized. So given the current situation, we're in a good spot to be able to lend money, and beyond that, people's deposits are safe in the bank, and so we don't have things like that to worry about. And so the first bullet point item talks about 3 to 6 months deferments on loans, and the regulators typically, when things turn down, when the economy starts to turn down, regulators have a tendency to get concerned and ask their banks to more aggressively collect loans. And because the banking industry is so well capitalized, and this was an event beyond anybody's control, they're actually going in the other extreme and really proactively encouraging banks to work with their borrowers. So that's a great thing. Most any bank will be more than willing to provide you with that type of flexibility on your loan, and knowing that they won't be criticized by the regulators after the fact. So that's a real positive thing. The other thing in terms of just being well capitalized, the banking system is also very, there's a lot of liquidity, so there's a lot of money to lend, and that's how banks make money is loaning money. So we're going to continue to look for opportunities to make loans to our customers and the community. And then with that, John touched a little bit on the Payment Protection Program, which is now known as PPP. And so that's an SBA low interest forgivable loan that's tied to your payroll expense. And that is actually done directly through your local financial institution. And to me, it's really just been an amazing program because realistically, it was just approved a little over a week ago when it was part of the CARES Act. And last Friday was the first day that it rolled out. And obviously, there's a significant amount of demand for something like this because of the attractiveness of it. It's a low interest rate and also being forgivable, that obviously a lot of businesses should and want to pursue this. But even though the system kind of got bogged down on the very beginning on the front end here, my sense is that within the next few days, things will loosen up a little bit. And there's a few unknowns that are left out there, but I think over the next week or so, things will clear up and the banks will be able to get the money out in the customer's hands. The other thing I was going to just make note of that is all the local lending institutions qualify to participate in that particular program. And then the other thing before I turn it over to Tyler, just maybe some quick advice is that it's important for you to communicate with your lender. If you're going to be tight with cash flow, if you're not going to be able to make your payments on time, I think it's good for you to reach out to your lender and let them know what's going on in your business or your personal life in terms of your personal finances. The other thing to think about is just to plan ahead. Hopefully things will open up here in the next few weeks and businesses will be up and running again. But in the meantime, you have to plan for alternatives in case the shutdown continues for an extended period of time. And the last thing is just to be patient. I know this PPP program is really a good opportunity for businesses to bring in some needed relief, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to be available in a short period of time. Congress has indicated that they're going to make more money available if they run out, so it's just I guess the advice today would just be patient, and I think that'll all kind of take care of itself in a short period of time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tyler to talk about the Bladex side.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Paula and Matt, for including Bladex in this conversation today. Just a couple of quick updates from our side, from the Bladex side of things, is that there are a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of information that's coming at everyone pretty fast and pretty furious. So between Mike Bierkness and myself, we're on calls with the state every morning through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and they include a lot of the state commissioners. So they're updating us on a pretty regular basis, which has been really important for us to be able to feel like we can get information back out there. A lot of organizations are sending documents that feel like they are listing out all of the information as far as the programs that are available. And ourselves, along with Matt at the chamber, and then also Greg Bergman at the SBDC, we've made some decisions to work together on this to get the information out to as many people as possible. The database that's available through the chamber is larger than Bladex and is larger than the SBDC. So it's important that we continue to work together to get that information out there. So typically you'll see that stuff come out and it'll be co-authored by all three of us, which has been very important to make sure that we're reaching the largest audience that we can. A couple of the state programs that I'll touch on just briefly is, there is a small business emergency loan program. They've allocated about $30 million at the state for this. Those loans are from $2,500 up to $35,000. So anything that you're looking for at the state level, you can go to Minnesota, so mn.gov, and click on the COVID-19 link on their site, and it'll bring you to all of their programs. But as the state's saying, state's, encouraging folks to go through at the federal level, go through and find the programs at the federal level that will benefit you the most and the quickest, and then go through that process. If that doesn't work out for you, then it's down to the state level and then down to the local level, where potentially there could be some money available, but we don't know that just yet. But as Paul mentioned, make sure you are talking to your bankers, make sure you're talking to whoever it is that's lent you money, and see what kind of options are out there. The last thing I want to touch on here just briefly, this morning we were given some information at the state level regarding the unemployment insurance and the process in which people are going through with regards to that. With this COVID-19 pandemic that's come out, there are 300,000 new unemployment applications that have been applied for at the state level. 95% of those are brand new to unemployment. So what you're seeing is a big slowdown in their systems. The system hasn't crashed, but they are slowing down. But they have opened up some phone lines to deal with just very specific questions. And we're here to help with that. If there's anybody that has questions on how to get through that process, please make sure you reach out to us and contact us. And the other thing is that at the federal level, they opened up this $600 a week program through the CARES Act that is designed to help supplement some of the income that gets lost through the unemployment. Now, if you have applied for unemployment benefits at the state level, this federal increase in dollars will automatically come to you. You don't have to reapply again. So we were informed of that this morning. The other thing is that if you are self-employed and you want to apply for those benefits, they're encouraging you to go out and fill out an unemployment application online through the state. You will get denied, but they understand that you will get denied. But when you do get denied and you are in the system, it will be identified for you. So you should then receive those benefits. So that was just the last thing I wanted to mention, Paula. So I guess I'll go ahead and turn it over to whoever's next.
Great, thanks. Shar, are you able to speak with us?
Yes. Do I need to mute anything? Unmute? Are we
We
good?
can hear you. We're good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I think thank you for inviting Growing Power just to represent all the area utilities. I think we have a good reputation of working with each other because of our historic storms and everything that utilities work well together. I think all of us are currently not doing disconnects and no late payment penalties, just to help everybody, business owners and residential members. We are sending disconnect notices out, but there's a reason for that. It's to make sure that people call us and talk to our billing department so they can work out a payment plan. There's also our billing representatives have all been given the authority to work with individuals and businesses and understand their financial situations so that we can make payment plans or plans that can get people through this. We also have always so many connections to like energy assistance, who's now getting more and more dollars in to help people during this time. And so the deferments and alternate payment plans, plus the additional resources through energy assistance can really help. But our billing department is set and ready to answer questions and to work with people on their own situation. And I think it's key to note that as a business, if you're closed or limited hours, you want to make sure that you're shutting off the lights, that unnecessary things are unplugged, and this goes for people's homes but for businesses as well. You have a copy machine that's just sitting there on all the time. That's going to use a lot of electricity for a week, for 2 weeks, or whatever. So just make sure things are shut off if they're not being used, which is good information at all times, and turning things down at night. And now with people working out of their homes, that's a whole nother personal situation. Residents are using electricity when they never did. They used to shut off all the lights, go to school, and now everybody's on their computers and all the lights are on and people are running their microwaves, and so you're going to have a higher electric bill, and that's not helpful. So the more we can be cognizant of that and watch what we do at home, and don't leave your computer on all the time if you're not actually on, perhaps. Now, unfortunately, I'm working from home. I VPN into my computer, so my computer at work has to be on. And I'm sure that's the case with many of you. In order to access from a laptop, you've got to keep that on. Just as a business owner, if you can do what you can, it's going to be helpful. And so then, too, I don't think you can shut that down. I mean, I never know when I have to access my work computer. But do what you can and call us. Call Minnesota Power, call Brainerd Public Utilities, whoever your utility provider is, and they'll work with you during this time.
Great. Thanks so much, Shar. I'm glad that it worked out. All right.
Yeah.
So we have Christy Westbrook up next with CTC. Christy, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Paula. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting CTC to be a part of this conversation. Just going to talk about a few things that we've done to either help you potentially save some money or make your operation more efficient, depending on where you're at in the total scheme of work right now. So the first is the remote worker. We have established that we have free internet speed upgrades. And so if you are a CTC customer and you'd like to do an internet speed upgrade because you're seeing more people online in your home, or you've moved your business to your home, you can certainly call in and ask for that upgrade. On the side of service suspension for businesses that have temporarily closed, if there are pieces in your business that you would like to have temporarily suspended or just shut on a soft shutdown, we're not charging any fees for that. You're certainly welcome to call in. Specifically, I think about if you have video services at your business. For a lot of you, you probably still want to keep your internet and your phone up. But if you do have TV or video services, those are always costly, especially in the restaurant setting. And perhaps you could have those put on a soft suspend until you're back open again. And then the last is we have over 40 free Wi-Fi hotspots throughout our service area. You can find those free Wi-Fi hotspots on our website at connectctc.com. And they are really good, robust connections. And so you certainly, if you do need a place to work, you can use your car and go pull up to one of the free Wi-Fi hotspots. And I think the last piece just to share with all of you is that we were prepared about a month ago. We made the decision to increase our pipes to the internet, and we've tripled our capacity to the areas that we need to get to. And so if you are a CTC customer, you should have no problem if you're on our FiberNet having robust connections that can handle everything that you need to do from your home right now. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christy. So Chris, you're up next. You want to unmute yourself? Awesome.
Chris Coles from Coast Commerce. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. And I'm going to start with just kind of basically how the local market is right now. I think oftentimes when we face a situation like this, there's always a question, how does this affect value? Should I be selling? Should I be buying? And the words I put on the slide, or Paul put on for me, are very basic, but right now it's really wait and see. What we're experiencing is kind of a new experiment that I don't know if it's ever really been done, where pretty much everything comes to a halt. So the negative of that is things slow down and there's some uncertainty, but the positive is we're all in the same boat for the most part. An encouraging sign I've seen is transactions that were pending leading up to the shelter in place. We've seen very little situations where those transactions have fallen apart or people have chosen not to continue to purchase. And we're finding as we talk to buyers, a lot of them, including and just individuals in general, including myself, see this as a temporary situation. I think as Americans, we're eternal optimists and hoping this time frame is shorter rather than longer. And so many people are looking at it as long as they can still get the financing, they can still move forward. They're going to move forward. You know, in the real estate market, we're not like the stock market where it's not a liquid market where you're seeing real-time values changing. So right now, if I'm valuing a property and we're still listing properties, I'm really using the same data I would have a month or 2 months ago. I don't have a COVID-19 discount. So, and optimistically, if we see a V-shaped recovery and we bounce out of this, we won't see much effect. I mean, we'll see a few areas, but I'm hopeful and optimistic that a lot of the real estate market will reasonably hold its values from where it was before all this occurred. A question that we get asked from a lot of people is regarding landlord-tenant relationships. You know, many businesses, especially restaurants, and it started with restaurants, now a lot of retail and service businesses as well, they're not allowed to operate in the centers that they are leasing. Well, some landlords, you know, at this point, landlords haven't been in a position where they're going after these tenants saying, you're not making payments, so I'm going to sue you. The reality is landlords need the tenants just as much as the tenants need the landlords, and the bankers need the landlords. Everybody's cooperating, and they're really just kind of pausing, working through this for a couple months. Now, what I want to emphasize to tenants is that doesn't mean that this rent is just going to magically disappear, that it's going to go away. But what I've seen, you know, landlords have either just eased and said, you know what, we'll give you some time, just like banks have, and we'll work through this. I've seen some landlords renegotiate the lease where they may take 2 or 3 months rent, say you don't need to make rent the next 2 to 3 months, but let's amortize that out and add that on to the remainder of the lease so that you can slowly catch up and you're not hit with a large chunk of money all at one time. I haven't ran into a lot of issues with landlords being unreasonable. I think, again, because we're all in the same boat, everybody's trying to be cooperative and find ways to work through this. So that, again, going back to evictions, I'm not seeing that. And on the residential side, they can't evict a tenant. So if from an apartment side, and Ginny Knutson will allude to this a little more, but there's a moratorium where landlords are not allowed to evict a residential tenant. That is not the case with commercial, but because of the way the court systems are right now, and because, again, like I said, landlords need the tenants just like the tenants need the landlords, I don't think we're going to see a lot of evictions in the short term. There's a clause, if you've ever looked in your lease, a fancy term called force majeure, I think is how you pronounce it. And that has to do with an act of God or something from the government that occurs that doesn't allow you to perform on your lease. There have been some tenants that have said, hey, I'm going to try to rely on this clause in my lease to say I don't need to make payments. The challenge with that is more often than not, the force majeure clause says, if something, an act of God, a pandemic or something stops you from performing on the lease, you have time to, during that time frame, you don't have to perform. However, usually there's a clause in there that says other than making a payment of money. So smart attorneys put that in there a long time ago. So most often, even if you can move forward with the force majeure clause saying, hey, I can't operate in here, it doesn't mean that you don't still have to pay the money. And we've had attorneys review some of the leases that landlords have had people trying to do that. I'm not an attorney by any means, but that's what we're seeing. And then you also, I think Daryl Puak will talk about it, but business interruption insurance is another factor that he'll allude to more. I haven't seen that coming into place and being allowed to be used for this, and Daryl will talk about that more. But overall, I'm always an eternal optimist, but I'm hopeful and optimistic that hopefully we're overreacting, not underreacting. We'll see a sharp recovery. And as long as we cooperate together, this is a short-term pain, but we'll be able to get through this.
Great, thanks, Chris. Ginny, you're up next.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks again for allowing the Bordenstein, Kruger & Knudsen Law Firm to be part of this discussion. I want to emphasize what others have talked about, and that is communication. Communicate with people you owe money to, communicate with the people who owe money to you. Lawyers can help you in that process. When there's an absence of information, it's usually the case that people fill that void with negative assumptions. So be sure you communicate with other people who you do business with, and that's going to help you go a long way. And lawyers can help you with that process. There have been a lot of sweeping new laws that have been put into place, and it has been very, quite a minefield to navigate for businesses. One area that I want to, that lawyers can certainly help out with is how to interpret these laws and how to apply them to your particular situation. There are some new employee leave laws that are really dramatic. And so you're going to want to look at those laws very carefully. Those are when employees need leave for various COVID-19 related reasons, school's out because they're ill, they're caring for people. I don't have time today to get into all of those ins and outs of that law, but a lawyer can really help you go through the law and see if it applies to your situation. Those leave laws apply to employers with less than 500 employees. There are some exemptions for employers that have less than 50 employees, but you're going to want to look at those laws very carefully. As Chris mentioned, one new thing that the governor passed was a suspension of residential evictions. That's going to affect a lot of residential landlords in this area, but I think it's also a positive for employers. You now know that if you have to lay off employees or reduce their hours, your employees are not going to be displaced because of an eviction because they can't make their rent. So that is, while it's a challenge for a lot of business people, it is also a good thing for our workforce in general. Another thing that people have been asking me about is estate planning in general, but I've also had business owners talk to me about succession planning. They want to know, do they have the proper policies in place within their organization if they're out for an extended period of time. So I recently helped an employer put together a policy that made it clear to his managers who would have authority to do certain things if he were out of work for a period of time. Not to mention, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of people who now estate planning is on the forefront of their minds. So that is certainly something your attorney can help you with. Because there is a lot of uncertainty, there are also potential for disputes that arise, but as Chris mentioned, the courts have slowed down and unfortunately are only able to have emergency hearings right now. They are hearing those by telephone and video, but the emergencies are very narrowly tailored. As a result, lawyers can really help people to negotiate conflicts that arise. We are looking at various alternative dispute resolution formats we've always been familiar with, but might come into play more so now that the courts are less able to help us in a prompt fashion. So mediation, arbitration, and just simple negotiation are ways that your lawyer can help you out through this situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ginny. So we have Daryl with Baxter Insurance Group next.
Thank you, Paul. Daryl Pulak, Baxter Insurance Group. I just wanted to thank the Chamber for putting on this event. I think there's a ton of really useful information that hopefully everyone's getting out of here. They asked me to talk about the insurance, and the biggest question that I am getting here at the office from my business customers is, does my business interruption cover for the pandemic that's going on right now? In a simple answer, the answer is no, it does not. Business interruption is a property coverage, and you must have direct physical damage to your property. So you have to have a fire or tornado or something damage your building. So I have not seen where business interruption has stepped in this situation. Some people are looking, well, there is what's called civil authority coverage. that could trigger business interruption. But unfortunately, every policy that I've seen and every webinar that I have done so far says that almost every policy has an exclusion for virus or bacteria situation under civil authority. So even if you get shut down because the government forces you to, it cannot be because of a virus or a bacteria. Now, new development that I am seeing right now, matter of fact, while I was sitting here, I got another email on it. Some states, including Minnesota, are trying to pass legislature that would make insurance companies pay for business interruption, even though it's not covered. I don't see this happening, and here's some numbers that I found on this. If the government forced insurance companies to pay for business income, and they only did it for small businesses, meaning 100 employees or less, they're estimating that it would cost the insurance company between 220 and 383 billion with a B per month. All right, if they increase that to businesses with 500 employees or less, they're estimating over 900 billion per month that it costs the insurance companies. Insurance companies have to have reserves set aside to pay future claims. The entire reserves of all insurance companies in the US is 812 billion. So literally, even if it was just businesses under 100 people, employees or less, within probably 2.5 months, it would financially wipe out pretty much every insurance company out there. So I don't see that coming into play, but anyways, there is some talk about that. Another thing that we've been working with a lot of customers, and for all of you business owners out there, you should be also, is looking at reducing your payrolls. If you have less payroll because you have employees laid off, you should for sure get a hold of your insurance carrier and reduce your estimated payrolls, because that'll make a huge difference on your work comp premiums. And then also your general liability is based off from usually gross sales or payroll. So by reducing those numbers, again, it can reduce your general liability. If you have vehicles, work vehicles that you're not using right now, suspend the coverage on them. Save some premium dollars there as well. And another area that you need to take advantage of and reach out to your carriers or your insurance agent is pretty much every insurance company that I've seen so far are giving deferment on your payments. 30 days, 60 days, and as this goes longer, they might give more. But what they're asking for is basically to give them a call, call the billing department, tell them that you've been affected, tell them that your sales are down, and what they will do is they will work with you. They'll take a reduced payment, maybe a partial payment. If things are really bad, maybe they'll take no payment, and they will not cancel you. So they're not going to charge late fees. They're not going to charge cancellation fees, but those are some things that need to be done that every business should be looking at. And one of your biggest costs could be your health insurance. Again, a lot of the companies are working with small business owners and large business owners and deferring those payments. So those are some of the suggestions that I have from the insurance industry. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So if you haven't already used the chat function to send a question, you can do that now. So I did get one for Paul Means. The question is, are the banks considering lowering interest rates on current loans or credit lines held? So currently held. So Paul, if you want to address that.
Sure. Yeah, every bank kind of looks at it differently. Once a variable rate loan that's been tied to, say, the prime rate has probably come down already, and some banks have their internal base rate that some loans are tied to that are variable rates. So, the bottom line is the banking industry hasn't had their cost of funds drop that much, even though the interest rates have dropped dramatically. So it's been a little more challenging for the banks to aggressively lower their interest rates on the fixed rate lending, at least up to now. So it's kind of each bank is making their own decision about how they want to handle refinancing, but that's kind of the current situation.
Great, thanks. we did get another question. Will we get a copy of these slides? Yes, we'll send that out along with the link to the video. Another question that came in, let's see. Do you have the ability to suggest to legislators as an insurance agent, so Daryl, this is probably yours, to look at a percentage based on lost sales to help business owners?
Yes, matter of fact, we are trying to contact our local representatives and just giving them some advice or some suggestions along this line, because to be honest, there's so much happening with the Senate and the state level, and even at the federal level, that they don't even have time to research and know, what some options are. A lot of the companies that I'm seeing, they're saying that they'll reduce payroll or gross receipts, they'll reduce them by 25% so far.
Okay, great.
Let me
yeah.
jump in really quickly too, and just to remind everyone that Senator Paul Gazelka is an insurance agent as well. So I know he's looking at a lot of these insurance-based relief solutions, and I've had brief conversations with him, but that's something they're considering at the state level.
Great. So another question, what do the timelines look like to have access to the SBA loans for the Payroll Protection Act once the application is submitted? I don't know who would like to answer. Paul? Okay.
I'll give you an update. So it's probably a day-by-day thing, like I'd mentioned earlier, that the system rolled out on Friday and it was pretty chaotic. Some banks were able to get into the system, some banks were not. We happened to have some better luck later in the day on Friday, and then we had people actually work through the whole weekend to get loans inputted into the system to get basically the loans approved, and then with that, the money gets set aside. But there's a little bit of uncertainty in terms of the timing of when those loans can actually be funded. As an example, probably the number one thing we're all waiting for is the actual note that borrowers sign. Typically, banks make loans like this all day long, but this has some unique features to it with a forgiveness of part of the debt. So we're kind of patiently waiting for that to come out. We had some calls here today with and got the sense that it should be available. The SBA is working on it. It should be available hopefully in the next few days. And then after it becomes available, then the banks can reach out to their customers where their loans are approved and have them come in and sign the note, and then the money would be available right away.
Okay. So we have probably at least 3 or 4 questions that have to do with SBA. And just as a reminder, we do have the Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. the webinar on that. So just looking through here, most of these have to do with that. There's one in particular here. Do you recommend taking the $10,000 economic disaster grant? What's the impact to the PPP? Again, that's maybe connected to that. Does anybody have any other questions, or do you want to address that particular one if one of you have the answers to that?
I can talk about the first side of that. Do you recommend taking this as Tyler? I would absolutely recommend applying for the $10,000 economic development grant. That's anytime you can apply for and potentially receive a grant, I would recommend doing so. If you have already sent in an application request for the economic injury disaster loan, you can still also get this grant. You just have to apply again. You don't lose your spot in the queue, if that makes sense, to where you were at after you applied for the injury disaster loan. But in regards to the disaster grant, absolutely apply for it. Grants don't come along very often, so when they're out there, please take the opportunity to apply for those. And I think I could let Paul probably answer the impact to the PPP question.
My understanding, and this is probably where I don't maybe know all the details, but my understanding is that it can be rolled in to the PPP program and become part of it. But that's a direct SBA loan, so they're the ones that typically would answer that question.
And again, I'll just jump in here and say that these technical questions, and there are literally thousands of questions and a lot of frustration regarding the programs and how quick they're going to be turned around and what you need to do to apply and how one interfaces from the other. That's what we're really hoping to get into in great detail on Wednesday at 2 o'clock with both the SBA and the U.S. Chamber. So if you can't make that one, and I know that that's really quick turnaround, is the best we could do given everyone's busy schedules. But if you can't make it, we're going to be posting a recording of that webinar as well. So just FYI.
All right, thanks, Matt. Right now, I don't have any other questions. There is one in regards to the application itself. Someone's having a problem trying to get past the business information screen. It has all the data with asterisk filled in, but the next button isn't lit up. Wondering if anyone else is having trouble, or maybe Tyler or Paul, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, this is Tyler again. I was reading that question and haven't heard that yet. That's a first for me. I guess my default to that would be I hate to say get out and start over, but you know, that may be depending on how far you've gotten. You should be able to save some of the information and maybe logging out and going back in. But I apologize. I have not heard that issue with this yet, and I've helped fill out a few applications, so I'm not familiar with that one. Like I said, my only answer would be to hopefully save what you've got and go back in and see if that prompts you to go past that page.
Great, thanks. We have another question, sort of regarding local bank versus SBA, but for the requirements for the forgiveness component of the PPP, who is verifying, the local bank or directly by the SBA?
It would be my understanding that the borrower would certify the amount that they're able to get forgiven, and then they provide that information to the bank for review. But it would first be certified by the borrower.
Okay, great. Carl Sam from Community Foundation wanted to let you all know, if you're from a nonprofit, that they're doing a session tomorrow on the CARES Act for nonprofits. Anyone else have any other questions?
Paul, I'll just jump in here just in the spirit of crowdsourcing, since we have just a couple of minutes left. We did our best to try to get a lot of industries represented, understanding that we have lots of great chamber members that serve in a variety of different capacities professionally. But if you're on the line and you have some advice that you'd like to share that would be an option for relief at the local level, something that someone can access that we may not have covered already, would you mind just jumping in and sharing that with the group?
Hello, does anybody read me?
Yep.
Do you have me, Matt? This is Ron Sanders, and I'm with the CRMC Championship. And I represent both the lodging industry, the tourism industry, which is very critical to our community when we come out of all of this. Yeah. In the meantime, we have a bunch of sponsors and partners that have been idled by the virus. And as you know, Matt, I've been trying to call every one of my sponsor participants not to obviously sell sponsorships, which is not appropriate this time. But I'm struggling to find ideas that we can do as a sponsor participant to help our other members of the community. And I know making masks is one of them, but I don't sew real well. So I'm looking for other ideas. Is it helping in delivery? Is it helping in manufacturing? How can our organization help the community at this time of need? Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We do have, I don't know if Matt was going to chime in at all there, but we did have another question that came in. I think, Ron, you, like a lot of other organizations, are really trying to figure out how to help each other.
Exactly.
So thank you for chiming in.
Yeah.
So one question here, with the backlog on unemployment, how long do you think it will take for people to start collecting?
Paula, this is Tyler. I guess I'd have to ask for which one are we referring to, because you're with the state unemployment benefits, they have waived the waiting period, the 1 week wait period. So those should be fairly automatic once you've logged in and completed the application. I'm assuming that we're talking about the federal benefits. So with regards to the federal benefits, they're saying that it should be the end of this week or the start of next week, where those benefits for the unemployment, the additional unemployment, should kick in. So end of this week, hopefully. Worst case scenarios, they're saying first part of next week for the federal portion of the unemployment benefits to kick in and for folks to start receiving those.
Great, thanks. In regards to Matt's question, is there anybody else on the call who has local resources for businesses that wants to chime in? We have just a couple minutes left before the end of the call.
This is Deb. Can you hear me?
Yes.
With Benefit Innovations, and we manage employers' benefits. So we're getting a lot of calls on what to do with their employees. So if they have questions, we are here to help the community. Depends on your insurance carrier. If your employee is considered furloughed, unemployment, terminated, there's all kinds of criteria, but we'll be glad to help employers sort through that. We have a lot of employers that want to keep their employees on their plans, whether they're working or not working. So feel free to reach out to us, even if you're not our client, and we'll be glad to help you sort through some of those things.
Great, thanks, Deb. Deb, would you just put your information in the chat box to everyone?
I certainly can do that.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah,
Paula, this is Pam Finch.
Hi, Pam.
I am going to speak up on behalf of nonprofit organizations who tend to be my clientele. And Ron Sanders was asking, how can hospitality industry, how can other industries that maybe want to make a difference be helpful? We've got some nonprofit organizations in the area that are helping out from a mental health standpoint. We talk a lot about, we've got people that are in trouble because they don't have money, that can lend itself to a rise in mental health issues. And so nonprofits like the Crisis Line, I just talked to Mary Moranis last week, who was saying that they've got more phone calls coming in than ever, and they're now trying to raise money to hire some, to bring in some additional people to be able to help out with volunteering or, you know, that expertise to be able to be on the phone and be able to support the extra phone calls that are coming through. We have organizations like the Mid-Minnesota Women's Center, who is taking on, you know, more, they have the resources to be able to help out folks that are in domestic violence or tough situations where they don't have those resources coming in that can help them out with that. So any nonprofit organization that is doing things for the community that helps support mental health or the things that we're seeing that are rising up because of the situation that people are finding themselves in, please consider sending resources in their direction.
Thanks so much, Pam. I appreciate that. So it is 3 o'clock. Unless anyone has a real burning desire to share, I want to be cognizant of your time. So thank you all so much for being here, and thanks especially to our panel. We really appreciate the extra time you've taken today and this last week to prepare. So we'll get this information out to you. The slide presentation will be sent to you, and the link to this webinar will also be, the video piece will be sent out, okay? So if you have any, I'll stay on the line if there's anything else. Otherwise, thank you so much. Matt, did you want to say anything yet?
Yeah, I just want to say that the chamber is absolutely here to support you in every possible way. I know I speak for Tyler at Bladec when I say the same thing. The difference between Bladec and the chamber is Bladec is considered to be essential. That's why Tyler's at the office and Matt's at home today, but we're both all plugged in and working. I'll end like I started. The best solutions are local solutions. Do not underestimate, please, the power of positivity and sending that buy local, Lakes Proud message. Help us do that. We have money in the community that we need to free up and start circulating again. And by giving people that positive nudge, we're able to do that. And we're seeing some real huge differences as a result of that. So if you can help us do that, we'd love it. And if you have any ideas on how we can be helpful at the chamber, we're all ears. So just reach out to us in any way. You know how to reach us. So thanks a lot. Hang in there, everybody. And I'm hopeful that we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.